The vanishing trails. The desert is supposed to remember everything. Every footstep presses a brief memory into the sand, a fragile record of movement, intention, and direction. Long after voices fade and camps are dismantled, footprints remain, stretching across dunes like quiet sentences written by passing travelers. Explorers trust these marks. They follow them to retrace their path, to confirm that no one has fallen behind, to prove that someone truly stood there moments before. But in one remote stretch of desert, the sand tells a story that does not make sense. Long trails of footprints appear suddenly across the open dunes. They are sharp, deep, untouched by wind or erosion, as if formed only minutes ago. The stride is steady and human. The spacing is natural. There is no sign of panic, no sign of struggle, no hesitation in the rhythm of movement. And then, without warning, the trail simply ends. Not near a vehicle, not at a campsite, not beside a rock formation or ridge. The final footprint stops in open air, surrounded by nothing but empty sand and silent heat. Beyond it, there is no continuation, no scuffed grains, no partial impressions, no fading marks carried away by the breeze. It is as if the next step was never taken. Search teams find no bodies, no dropped equipment, no broken radios or emergency signals, no drag marks, no signs of collapse, no disturbances in the surrounding terrain. Only absence. The footprints do not curve away. They do not circle back. They do not lead towards shelter or shade. They simply terminate mid-journey, mid-purpose, mid-existence. Standing before these vanishing trails creates a strange psychological tension. Your eyes expect continuation. Your mind demands logic. Something must have happened after that last step. A fall, a turn, a mistake. But the desert offers no answers. It provides only a clean ending where no ending should exist. It feels less like a disappearance and more like an interruption. As if reality itself paused for a fraction of a second and quietly removed a person from the scene, leaving only their final footprint behind as evidence that they were once there at all. They didn't walk away. They stopped existing. The first discovery. The first disappearance was not supposed to become a mystery. At the time, it was classified as a routine field complication, the kind that happens occasionally in extreme environments where heat, isolation, and equipment failure can distort judgment and data. The expedition itself was small. 6 researchers sent to document unusual mineral patterns detected by satellite imagery in a remote sector of the desert, hundreds of kilometers from the nearest settlement. The terrain was flat, dry, and seemingly harmless compared to mountainous or polar regions. Visibility stretched endlessly in all directions. There were no deep canyons, no sudden cliffs, no dense vegetation where someone could vanish unnoticed. Everything about the location suggested predictability. The team arrived in early spring, when temperatures were harsh but survivable. They established a simple base camp near a cluster of low dunes and began systematic surveys each morning, walking measured routes marked by GPS beacons and physical trail indicators. Every movement was logged. Every radio check occurred on schedule. Their work was calm, almost monotonous, long hours of data collection under a silent sky. On the 4th day, the routine broke. At 10:17 a.m., one researcher, Elias Monroe, left the camp alone to perform a short-range surface scan less than 2 kilometers east of their position. It was a standard task, repeated dozens of times during the expedition. His body camera was active. His radio transmitted clearly. His biometric monitors showed normal heart rate, hydration levels, and stable body temperature. There was no sign of stress or abnormal behavior in his voice when he checked in. "Heading to marker 3, he said. "Should be back in 40 minutes. That was the last confirmed communication. At first, no one worried. Delays were common. Instruments malfunctioned. Winds interfered with transmissions. 10 minutes passed, then 20, then 40. When Elias did not return after 90 minutes, the team initiated a basic search protocol. 2 members followed his GPS route on foot while another monitored the satellite feed from the portable uplink station. His signal marker showed a clean, straight path from camp toward marker 3, and then an abrupt stop roughly 1.3 kilometers out. No drift, no deviation, no sign of movement beyond that location. They expected to find him resting, repairing equipment, or dealing with a minor injury. Instead, they found only footprints. The sand preserved them perfectly. Each step was clearly impressed, the edges crisp and sharp, untouched by wind. The stride length matched Elias's gait profile exactly. The pressure distribution confirmed normal walking speed and posture. There was nothing irregular in the pattern. Until the final step, the trail ended suddenly in open terrain. The last footprint was fully formed, heel to toe, pointing forward as if mid-stride. Beyond it, the sand was completely undisturbed, no partial impression, no scuffing, no sliding marks, nothing. It was as if Elias had lifted his foot for the next step and never placed it back down. The team circled the area repeatedly. They searched in widening arcs. They scanned for depressions, cracks, signs of collapse beneath the surface. They found none. The desert floor was solid, compacted by centuries of wind and mineral compression. A fall or sinkhole was physically impossible at that location. They called his name, shouted into the open heat, waited for any response. There was only silence. By late afternoon, a formal rescue alert was transmitted. External support teams mobilized overnight, arriving the next morning with drones, thermal imaging equipment, ground-penetrating radar, and aerial mapping systems. The search radius expanded rapidly, 5 kilometers, then 10, then 20. Nothing, no heat signature, no buried mass. No biological trace detectable by sensors, no radio signal recovery, no visual evidence from overhead drones. Even Elias's personal equipment was gone. His scanner, his water pack, his boots, his clothing, his body camera. Everything had vanished simultaneously without leaving a single fragment behind. The only remaining proof of his existence in that moment was a line of footprints ending in empty air. Investigators initially proposed rational explanations. Perhaps he removed his boots and walked barefoot, disproven by continuous boot tread patterns. Perhaps wind erased subsequent footprints, but wind conditions had been minimal and surrounding tracks remained untouched. Perhaps GPS error, yet satellite logs confirmed stable positioning accuracy. Perhaps animal interference, no overlapping prints or disturbance existed. Every hypothesis failed against the physical evidence. The body camera footage was reviewed frame by frame. It showed Elias walking calmly across the dunes, scanning the ground, occasionally commenting on mineral readings. There was no sign of danger, no sudden movement, no interruption, until the recording abruptly ended mid-step. The final frame captured a blurred edge of sand rising into view, as if the camera was still moving forward when the signal terminated. There was no distortion, no electromagnetic spike, no compression artifact. The recording simply stopped. His biometric data ended at the same exact timestamp. Heart rate ceased transmitting without fluctuation or spike. Neural activity did not register distress. The signal dropped as if the source itself had been removed from measurable space. Search operations continued for 6 days. When nothing was found, the case was officially classified as an unexplained loss due to extreme environmental conditions. The explanation satisfied paperwork requirements, but convinced no one who had stood at the edge of that final footprint. The team dismantled the camp in silence. No one spoke much during the return journey. They avoided looking at the sand too long, as if the desert itself had become unreliable, a surface that could no longer be trusted to reflect reality accurately. One of the researchers later wrote in a private log, "It wasn't that he disappeared, it was that the world forgot to continue him." At the time, the incident was filed away and nearly forgotten by the outside world, until another expedition returned to the same region and found a second trail, ending the same way. Patterns in disappearance. At first, the second disappearance was treated as coincidence. Statistically, unexplained losses occur in extreme environments. Heat stroke, navigation errors, equipment malfunction, and psychological stress can create fatal chains of mistakes. One missing researcher in a desert, while tragic, was not unprecedented. The official report closed Elias Monroe's case with vague language and unresolved assumptions, and the region remained open for future exploration. 6 months later, another team entered the same sector. This expedition was larger and more technologically equipped. Their mission was unrelated, atmospheric sampling and underground mineral mapping, but their base camp was established less than 12 kilometers from the location of the first disappearance. The team was briefed on prior incidents, yet no concrete danger warnings existed. No hazard zones had been declared. No geological instability had been identified. The desert remained, on paper, safe. On the third evening, one of the technicians, Mara Kincaid, volunteered to perform a short sensor recalibration run just before sunset. The route was short and well marked. She carried redundant trackers, audio logging, and a live drone overhead. She never returned. The drone footage captured her walking steadily across the sand, occasionally glancing upward to confirm the drone's position. Her movements were relaxed. There was no sign of urgency or confusion. The signal remained stable until it ended abruptly without interference or warning. When the team reached the coordinates, they found a familiar and deeply unsettling sight. A single trail of footprints leading away from camp and ending in nothing. The distance between the final two prints was normal. There was no stumble, no hesitation, no deviation in direction. The last footprint appeared fully formed, as if frozen mid-motion. Beyond it, the sand remained perfectly smooth. The similarity to the first case was undeniable. Investigators compared the data sets. Both disappearances occurred during calm weather conditions. Both victims were walking alone, but under active monitoring. Both showed stable biometrics up to the moment of disappearance. Both signals terminated instantly and simultaneously across all devices. Both left behind complete footprints that stopped abruptly mid-stride. Probability began to shrink. When a third disappearance occurred 8 months later, this time involving a geological surveyor named Daniel Reed, the pattern could no longer be dismissed. Daniel vanished during a morning solo scan less than 9 kilometers from the previous sites. His footprints ended exactly the same way. His body camera ended mid-frame. His biometric feed went silent without anomaly. 3 cases, same geometry, same behavior, same impossible ending. The desert was no longer simply dangerous. It was consistent. A joint task group was formed combining geophysicists, atmospheric scientists, signal engineers, neurologists, and data analysts. Their goal was not to explain a single event, but to find structure across events, something repeatable, measurable, predictable. Mapping revealed that all disappearances clustered within a loose elliptical zone approximately 30 kilometers wide. No visible surface features distinguished the area. Satellite imagery showed uniform sand composition and topography. Magnetic field readings showed only mild natural fluctuations. Radiation levels remained within normal background range. Nothing obvious marked the zone as special. Yet the disappearances respected its invisible boundary. No cases occurred outside it. Temporal analysis uncovered subtle similarities. Each event happened during transitional periods of the day, early morning or late afternoon, when temperature gradients between ground and air shifted rapidly. Wind patterns were low. Atmospheric pressure remained stable. These windows were narrow, lasting less than 40 minutes each day. It was not random. It was conditional. Sensor engineers examined the signal failures more closely. The termination patterns did not match equipment malfunction, interference, or jamming. Instead, all signals, GPS, radio, biometric telemetry, video feed, ceased transmission at the same timestamp with 0 latency difference. In simple terms, everything stopped at once, not gradually, not sequentially, not degraded. The data stream was cut cleanly, as if the source had been instantly removed from the network of measurable reality. Ground-penetrating radar surveys ruled out subsurface cavities or collapses. Thermal sweeps showed no buried heat mass. Chemical sampling revealed no corrosive or reactive substances capable of dissolving biological matter so completely and silently. There was no physical mechanism that matched the evidence. Some researchers proposed microscale gravitational anomalies, tiny, transient distortions capable of displacing matter. Others suggested localized quantum decoherence events, where matter temporarily lost coherence with observable spacetime. A few quietly discussed simulation error models, where certain coordinates experienced computational instability. None of the theories could be tested directly, because no instrument ever detected the event itself, only the aftermath. Psychological patterns also emerged. Review of audio logs revealed subtle similarities in the final spoken words of each missing person. None expressed fear, none reported visual anomalies. Their voices remained calm, focused on routine observations, mineral density, sensor alignment, wind readings, until the recording abruptly ended mid-sentence. No warning, no anticipation, no awareness. This detail disturbed researchers more than any physical anomaly. Whatever occurred did not announce itself. It did not trigger survival instincts. It did not feel dangerous until existence itself stopped. The footprints became the central physical evidence. High-resolution scans showed that pressure distribution in the final footprints remained normal. There was no sudden increase or decrease in weight, no imbalance, no stumble. The foot had pressed into the sand with the same force and angle as every step before it. The body had not reacted, which meant the event occurred faster than neural response time, faster than perception, faster than pain. The sand recorded the last moment of ordinary motion, a person walking confidently forward, while reality erased everything above it. Statisticians calculated the odds of 3 identical unexplained disappearances occurring naturally in the same region under similar conditions. The probability approached 0. This was not coincidence. It was repetition. Controlled, whether intentionally or not. The desert began to be referred to internally as a null corridor, a region where continuity occasionally failed. Field teams adopted new safety protocols: no solo walks, reduced exposure windows, increased drone coverage, remote sampling whenever possible. Yet even with precautions, the unease remained. Every footprint now carried a quiet tension. Each step forward became a small gamble with existence. The desert no longer felt empty. It felt observant, as if something within the environment recognized movement, patterns, presence, and occasionally removed them without sound, without violence, without explanation. Not a predator, not a storm, not a collapse, but a silent correction. And the most terrifying realization was not that people were disappearing. It was that whatever was causing it was doing so consistently, which meant it could happen again. The last recorded walk. By the time the 4th expedition was approved, no one pretended this was ordinary research anymore. The disappearances had crossed the threshold from anomaly into pattern. 3 individuals, 3 identical endings, 3 silent erasures in the same invisible region of desert. The data suggested conditional triggers, narrow temporal windows, and a spatial boundary that behaved like an unseen perimeter. If the phenomenon could not be detected passively, the only remaining option was direct observation. Someone had to walk into it while the world was watching. The proposal sparked intense internal debate. Ethics committees objected. Risk analysts argued that probability models were incomplete. Psychologists warned that even controlled exposure carried unknown neurological risks. Yet funding agencies pressed forward. Understanding the phenomenon was now considered a matter of long-term safety, not only for exploration, but for the fundamental understanding of reality itself. A volunteer stepped forward. Her name was Dr. Lena Hartman, a systems engineer specializing in sensor fusion and real-time telemetry integration. She was not a thrill seeker. She was methodical, precise, and fully aware of the danger. Her reasoning was simple. If the event occurred faster than perception, maximizing instrumentation density and synchronization offered the best chance of capturing transitional data, even if only for milliseconds. The test site was established near the geometric center of the null corridor. The environment looked ordinary. Pale dunes rolled quietly under a cloudless sky. The air shimmered faintly with heat. No visible markers distinguished this patch of desert from any other. But beneath the calm surface, every system was awake. A lattice of autonomous drones hovered at multiple altitudes, overlapping visual fields from every angle. Ground-based LiDAR scanners mapped microtopography in real time. High-speed spectrometers monitored atmospheric composition at millisecond resolution. Magnetometers, gravimetric sensors, quantum noise detectors, and synchronized atomic clocks created a dense mesh of measurement. Lena wore a lightweight telemetry suit embedded with hundreds of biometric and inertial sensors. Her helmet integrated multiple camera feeds, eye tracking, neural activity monitoring, and redundant transmission channels routed through separate satellites. Every device was synchronized to the same timestamp down to nanoseconds. If anything happened, it would be recorded. The window was chosen carefully. Late afternoon, when thermal gradients stabilized briefly before sunset, wind speed measured near zero, atmospheric pressure steady, all parameters matched previous disappearance conditions. Lena stood at the marked starting point, her boots resting on untouched sand tree green, telemetry grimmed over the command channel, visual feed stable, biometrics nominal. Lena took a slow breath. Beginning walk, she said calmly. Her first steps pressed clean impressions into the sand. The drones adjusted automatically, maintaining distance and angle. Data streamed continuously into the mobile command station several kilometers away, where dozens of analysts watched overlapping feeds in silence. She walked at a steady pace, neither cautious nor rushed, mirroring the natural gait patterns observed in previous victims. 20 meters, 40 meters, 60 meters. Her heart rate remained stable. Neural signals showed relaxed focus. No unusual electromagnetic fluctuations appeared in any sensor array. The desert behaved exactly as it always had. Lena narrated softly as she walked, describing surface texture, temperature variations, minor mineral reflections, not because it was necessary, but because it created a continuous audio timestamp that might reveal subtle disruptions later. At 90 meters, a faint anomaly appeared. One of the quantum noise sensors registered a brief spike, less than 2 milliseconds, well within background fluctuation thresholds. Analysts flagged it, but did not interrupt. Lena felt nothing. At 112 meters, a second spike appeared, slightly stronger, still ambiguous. Her voice remained calm. Sand density slightly higher here, reflective granules present. The drones maintained perfect lock. At 130 meters, the system registered a synchronization jitter across several clocks, a discrepancy measured in picoseconds, normally insignificant. Today, alarming. Multiple analysts leaned forward. Confirming clock variance? One said quietly. Lena took another step. The next frame changed everything. Her forward foot lifted from the sand, the heel cleared, the toe followed, her weight shifted. The step was mid-transition, and then the visual feed froze for exactly one frame. Not static, not distortion, not signal noise, just a single frozen image of Lena's boot suspended inches above the sand. The following frame showed empty desert, no blur, no displacement, no collapse, no shadow. She was simply gone. All telemetry streams terminated at the same timestamp. Every camera feed went silent. Every biometric channel flatlined without fluctuation. Every drone lost its target lock simultaneously. Every sensor returned null. The atomic clocks recorded a microscopic discontinuity, a gap so small it barely registered, yet large enough to disrupt synchronization. Silence filled the command station. For several seconds, no one spoke. Then alarms triggered. Delayed system responses reacting to the sudden loss of input streams. Operators scrambled to verify data integrity, fearing catastrophic system failure. But the systems were intact. Only Lena was missing. Emergency recovery protocols deployed immediately. Drones descended to low altitude. Ground scanners swept the area in expanding grids. Thermal sensors searched for any trace of heat. Spectral analyzers scanned for chemical residue, ionization trails, electromagnetic afterimages. Nothing. The sand beneath where Lena had last stepped remained undisturbed. Her final footprint was there, sharply defined, fully formed, identical in pressure and geometry to every step before it. Beyond that point, there were no marks, no partial impressions, no drag, no compression. The footprint ended in perfect nothingness. A physical marker was placed beside it for reference. Measurements confirmed alignment with previous disappearance sites to within centimeters. The pattern was complete. Data analysis continued for weeks. Frame-by-frame review revealed that the frozen frame contained no visual artifact indicating force or motion anomaly. Lena's posture remained balanced. Her muscles showed no sign of reflexive tension. Eye tracking data indicated forward focus. Neural telemetry showed no fear spike, no pain response, no anticipatory stress. She had no warning. The clock discontinuity became the most debated anomaly. It suggested a localized temporal distortion, not large enough to be perceptible, but sufficient to disrupt atomic synchronization. Yet no gravitational spike or space-time curvature signature accompanied it. It was as if a tiny slice of time had been briefly removed, and Lena existed precisely within that missing interval. Another anomaly emerged in spectral data, a brief, unexplained absence of background quantum noise coinciding exactly with the disappearance timestamp, a silence in randomness itself. Not noise, not signal, absence. The phrase began circulating quietly among the team. She didn't move into something. Something moved through her. Or worse, reality briefly forgot that she was supposed to be there. The experiment proved one thing conclusively. The phenomenon was real. It was instantaneous. It was non-destructive. It left no residual energy signature. It did not interact with matter in any measurable way. It simply removed existence from continuity. The desert had not consumed Lena. It had allowed something else to pass. And the footprints remained, fragile imprints in sand, as the only evidence that a human being had once occupied that precise coordinate in space and time. The last recorded walk ended not with violence or chaos, but with perfect, terrifying quiet. What could remove a person? Once the shock of the last recorded walk began to settle, a deeper and more unsettling question took its place. If nothing physically removed the body, if no force displaced matter, if no energy spike, collapse, radiation, or chemical reaction occurred, then what exactly had happened to Dr. Lena Hartman? 3 disappearances could still be argued as coincidence or extreme unknown environmental hazard. But the 4th event, captured by synchronized instrumentation, atomic clocks, and multi-angle surveillance, removed the comfort of denial. Something real had occurred, something precise, something selective. The problem was not lack of data. It was that the data refused to behave like any known category of physical interaction. Every known process that removes matter leaves signatures. Explosions generate heat and pressure waves. Chemical reactions alter composition. Gravitational events distort surrounding fields. Electromagnetic forces leave measurable radiation. Biological decay produces trace compounds. Even advanced theoretical phenomena, micro black holes, quantum tunneling, vacuum decay, predict some measurable disturbance. Here, there was none. The environment before and after the disappearance was identical down to instrumental noise. The desert had not changed. Only the person was gone. The first hypothesis explored was localized space-time deformation, a microscopic rift or fold capable of displacing matter outside observable coordinates. In theory, such distortions could allow matter to slip into higher dimensional topology or collapse geometric pockets. If the rift opened and closed faster than neural perception, the subject would experience no warning. But this model failed under scrutiny. Space-time distortions should generate gravitational waves, lensing artifacts, or detectable curvature anomalies. The sensors recorded none. The atomic clock discrepancy was too small to indicate significant relativistic displacement, and no residual energy imbalance was observed. If space-time had bent, the universe should have noticed. It did not. The second hypothesis involved quantum decoherence collapse, a localized region where wave function coherence failed catastrophically, causing macroscopic matter to lose stable interaction with surrounding reality. In simplified terms, the person's particles might have stopped agreeing on which version of reality they belonged to. This explanation aligned loosely with the brief absence of quantum noise detected during Lena's disappearance, a temporary silence in probabilistic fluctuation. Yet this model raised deeper problems. Decoherence normally produces randomness, not disappearance. It does not selectively remove organized biological structures while leaving surrounding matter untouched. It does not erase complex systems cleanly without residual entanglement traces. And it certainly does not preserve footprints while deleting the body above them. Quantum theory could not explain why sand remembered what reality forgot. The third hypothesis came from information physics, the idea that physical existence is fundamentally a form of stored and processed information. If matter is encoded rather than absolute, then it may be subject to corruption, loss, or overwrite under certain unknown conditions. In this model, the person was not destroyed. they were dereferenced, like a file pointer removed from an operating system while the storage medium remains intact. The sand retained its local state change, the footprint, but the higher level structure representing the person ceased to be indexed by reality. This theory unsettled many researchers because it implied that existence itself behaves like a computational process with error states. The desert, in this interpretation, was not dangerous terrain, it was unstable memory. Another hypothesis proposed environmental phase misalignment, a temporary divergence between local physical constants and global universal parameters. If a microregion briefly operated under slightly different physical rules, matter crossing that boundary might fail to reintegrate coherently when the region normalized. Imagine stepping into a fractionally different universe that exists for less than a millisecond, long enough to accept matter, short enough to close without returning it. Yet no boundary effects were detected, no gradient, no transitional signatures. The event appeared instantaneous and seamless. Some researchers quietly explored more controversial ideas: simulation boundary faults, rendering failures, or correction algorithms operating at a deeper layer of reality. In such models, reality is not continuous substance but dynamically generated output. Under rare conditions, object persistence might fail, not because of violence, but because of omission. If an entity is not refreshed in the next frame of reality, it simply ceases to appear. The frozen video frame of Lena's suspended boot haunted these discussions. It looked eerily like a paused render, a frame that existed momentarily before the next frame failed to include the object. Yet such speculation bordered on metaphysics rather than testable science. Still, the data resisted conventional explanation. Biological explanations were dismissed entirely. No toxin acts that selectively. No organism removes a human without trace. No known predator or environmental hazard operates silently, instantaneously, and perfectly. Geological explanations failed as well. No sinkholes, no collapses, no subsurface movement. The ground was stable. The region showed no mechanical capacity for swallowing matter whole. Atmospheric explanations offered no relief, no pressure anomalies, no ionization, no electromagnetic storms. The air behaved normally. Even human error could not account for synchronized sensor termination across independent systems. What remained was an uncomfortable gap between observation and comprehension. The disappearances violated three fundamental assumptions of everyday physics: continuity, that objects persist through time unless acted upon; locality, that changes propagate through space via measurable interactions; conservation, that matter and energy transform rather than vanish. Here, continuity broke without interaction, locality failed without transmission, conservation left no trace. Something had removed a person without touching the environment. Or worse, something had removed the person from the environment. The footprints offered the only stable clue. They demonstrated that the body existed fully until the final step. There was no partial fade, no distortion of pressure distribution, no gradual loss of mass. The person remained entirely intact until the exact instant they were gone, which meant the removal event was binary: present, absent, no transition state. That detail suggested a threshold phenomenon rather than a force, a condition that, once crossed, triggered complete removal. Not unlike a system reaching an invalid state, researchers began modeling the desert region as a boundary layer between stable and unstable informational regimes. Under rare conditions, specific temperature gradients, atmospheric stability, spatial coordinates, the boundary briefly intersected with human movement. The person did not fall into something. They crossed into a state where persistence was no longer guaranteed. Perhaps the most disturbing implication was this: if the mechanism could remove a person without resistance, awareness, or residue, then nothing about being human offered protection. No strength, no intelligence, no technology, no consciousness. Existence itself was conditional, and the desert was quietly demonstrating that condition. Not violently, not dramatically, but with absolute indifference. The question was no longer what could remove a person. The question was how often reality quietly corrects itself elsewhere, unnoticed, undocumented, unrecorded, in places where no one is watching the sand for footprints that end in nothing. The step you can't return from. The desert has not changed. The dunes still rise and fall under the same indifferent sun. Wind still drags thin lines across the sand. Heat still shimmers along the horizon, bending distant shapes into familiar mirages. From a distance, nothing about the landscape suggests danger, instability, or hidden violence. It looks like every other empty place humans have crossed for centuries. And yet, beneath that calm surface, something irreversible has been revealed. There is now a coordinate in the world where a human step does not guarantee continuation, a place where movement does not always lead forward, a place where existence itself becomes conditional. The final footprint still remains. Researchers have preserved it beneath a transparent protective structure, shielding the fragile impression from wind and erosion. Laser scans capture its geometry daily, recording every microscopic grain displacement. It has become a quiet monument, not to a person, but to the moment a person stopped being measurable. Visitors stand at the edge of the enclosure and stare at the empty sand beyond the footprint. Their eyes instinctively search for the next mark, the next sign of motion. The mind expects continuation. It expects cause and effect, step and response, action and consequence. But there is nothing, just blank sand stretching forward like an unanswered sentence. For some, the footprint represents loss. For others, it represents failure. For a few, it represents warning. Yet no sign, fence, or barrier can truly mark where the boundary lies. The desert does not display lines or signals. It does not announce its thresholds. The disappearance zone exists invisibly, indifferent to intention or awareness. You could stand one step away from it and never know. This realization has quietly altered how those involved see the world. Field researchers no longer walk casually across open ground. They watch their steps more closely, not because the desert itself frightens them, but because the assumption of guaranteed persistence has been broken. The idea that the universe will always allow the next moment to arrive feels less certain than it once did. In meetings, discussions no longer focus solely on the desert. They drift toward larger questions. What defines existence? What ensures continuity? What prevents reality from simply failing to refresh a person from one moment to the next? Science has always assumed that the universe is stable by default, that change requires force, energy, interaction. Now, stability itself feels like something that must be actively maintained, and no one knows by what. The disappearances did not end with explosions, warnings, or visible anomalies. They ended with silence and absence. The people who vanished did not experience terror, struggle, or awareness. They were simply removed between frames of reality. There was no final message, no goodbye, no last thought we can measure. Only a footprint where a person had once stood. Some philosophers involved in the investigation began referring to the event as a continuity breach, a reminder that existence may not be a permanent state, but a process that must remain uninterrupted to persist. If that process falters even briefly, the result is not damage, it is deletion. This idea unsettles even the most rational minds. We are comfortable with danger, risk, and mortality because they follow understandable mechanisms. We know what fire does, we know what gravity does, we know what time does. But what do you do with a threat that does nothing and yet removes everything? You cannot run from it. You cannot detect it. You cannot negotiate with it. You cannot even feel it. It does not behave like an enemy. It behaves like a missing rule, and missing rules cannot be confronted, only discovered after they fail. In the months since the last recorded walk, no further disappearances have been confirmed. Expeditions in the region have been suspended indefinitely. Remote sensors continue to monitor environmental stability, hoping to capture any subtle signature that might precede another event. So far, the desert remains quiet, too quiet. The absence of new incidents does not bring comfort, it brings uncertainty. If the phenomenon operates conditionally, then silence does not mean safety. It means waiting. Waiting for the right alignment of invisible variables, waiting for another step. The story of the disappearing footprints has not reached the public in full detail. Official reports describe anomalous sensor failures and unresolved losses. The deeper implications remain classified, not out of secrecy alone, but because no clear explanation exists to share. How do you explain to the world that reality itself may occasionally misplace people? How do you warn someone about a danger that has no shape, no signal, no pattern visible to the human senses? You cannot draw a map for it. You cannot place a sign that says, "Do not exist here." And yet the knowledge lingers quietly in the minds of those who stood beside that final footprint. Every step any of us takes now carries a faint, subconscious awareness that continuity is not guaranteed, that the universe allows our existence moment by moment, frame by frame, without promise of permanence. We walk assuming the next moment will arrive. We trust the ground to hold us. We trust reality to remain coherent. But somewhere in a silent desert, a footprint ends in nothing. A reminder that one step, just one, may be the step you can't return from. Not because you went too far, not because you made a mistake, but because the world simply did not continue you.
Shadows crawl where the light won't go. A silent wind, it starts.